Keep Right with Ralph K. Ginorio. The Perils of Political Inoculation. 1. Applying Biology to Humanity. Modern thinkers cannot resist the misapplication of biological models to human society. Since the late 19th century, Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection has been morphed into social Darwinism. Darwin basically asserted that in nature, life forms are engaged in a perpetual struggle for survival over very limited natural resources. Living things that acquire the necessary resources can breed in sufficient numbers to perpetuate their particular form. Those that fail become extinct. This brutal survival of the fittest was and is utilized by many leading thinkers to understand how every distinct group of human people relates to all others. To such individuals, the Judeo-Christian notion that every man and woman are sibling children of God has been eclipsed by a pitiless struggle to survive at the expense of all others. Over 6 millennia of humane developments have been scrapped by the trendsetters within the West in favor of Paleolithic tribalism and brutality. The inevitable result of this fundamental devolution was revealed in the following lovely moments of humanity: the Armenian genocide, the Ukrainian famine, the Gulag archipelago, the final solution to the Jewish question, the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, the killing fields of Kampuchea, and the Yugoslav ethnic cleansing, all results of social Darwinism. This dehumanized savagery is still being practiced by Boko Haram, Hamas, Hezbollah, ISIS, and all other Islamists and terrorists. Today, the dictators, ruling parties, and governments of Red China, North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, most Soviet successor states, and Putin's Russia all practice variants of this limitless barbarism. Human beings are not viruses, nor are we dumb animals. We possess sentient awareness. We have individuality and employ our own judgment and free will. The most civilized and beneficent of pre-industrial philosophies and faiths assert that we are infused with God-given natural rights, such as life, liberty, and property. Fundamentally, while we may each choose a cause, to live for, and even die or kill for, we are not mere human resources. None of us are merely raw materials to be expended to serve someone else's megalomania. However, all industrial and post-industrial ideologies have communitarian and utopian characteristics that always result in the sacrifice of the independent person on an altar of some variant of ideal of our potential for perfectibility. Encapsulations of such include Karl Marx's "From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs," Adolf Hitler's "One nation, one empire, one leader," and Star Trek Mr. Spock's infamous "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one." 2. Political inoculation. In simplest terms, live virus inoculation involves introducing one's body to a manageable amount of a threat to train one's immune system to fight it. For example, in today's MMR vaccines, carefully measured innocuous quantities of live measles, mumps, and rubella viruses are injected into a person to better prepare his or her body to defend against and repel these particular viruses in the future. There are 2 supreme examples of the disastrous results of misapplying the principle of medical inoculation to fix political and social problems: Red China and Nazi Germany. 3. Red China. 19th century China keenly remembered when it was the known world's central flowery of human civilization. This remembrance both tantalized and tortured every Chinese patriot because it was at such variance with their reality. At that time, everything in China's traditional culture was utterly impotent to counter Western industrial power. The roots of today's fentanyl crisis exist in that time's forced importation of opium into China by British traders. Manchu China's inability to resist Victorian-era predation by all industrialized nations, including Japan, is the reason behind today's Chinese Communist Party's brittle assertion of claims over non-Chinese territories. From Japan's Senkaku Islands, the South China Sea's Spratly and Paracel Island chains, Vietnam's northern hills, Burma's northern mountains, India's high Himalayas, and Russia's Amur River region, the CCP covets other nations' territory. Red China has also extinguished both Tibet and Xinjiang's independence, and threatens Nepal and Bhutan's independence, as well as posing an existential menace to Taiwan's ongoing existence as an independent, democratic nation, which it is. China fought to discover a way to survive the West on its own terms. Instead of emulating Japan by bringing in the British to build their modern navy, the Prussians to build their modern army, and Americans to build their industry, China at first proudly insisted on its culture's innate superiority. This pride finally died in the Boxer Rebellion of 1900. Many Chinese concluded that only by inoculating themselves against the West with a Western idea could they resist and overcome. A distorted Christianity was embraced by the Taiping, who almost overthrew the Manchu dynasty in the late 1800s. Their rebellion ultimately failed because the Chinese imperials employed Western troops in their empire's defense. A form of nationalism and socialism was adopted by the Kuomintang, who succeeded in overthrowing the empire and establishing a republic. However, warlord anarchy and Japanese invasion doomed these Chinese nationalists to failure and exile. Instead, it was communism, supported by the Soviet Union, which prevailed. Today's CCP claims that only by their intervention was China saved and made to rise again as a great power. Their claims are false and hollow. They evaded rather than fought the Japanese. At the height of their Cold War power, it was Stalin's USSR that enabled the CCP to win their civil war and also hold the line in Korea during the Korean War. The result was the worst mass murder in all of human history, with Mao Tse-Tung's Great Leap Forward and Cultural Revolution killing from 60 to 120 million Chinese in peacetime. China's traditional culture was utterly destroyed in mainland China. Even the language, written and spoken, even people's names. Any pretensions to the contrary are modern Chinese communist propaganda. Today, Xi Jinping, nominally communist but functionally National Socialist regime, threatens to initiate a new general war with an economy built exclusively on Western investments began in the 1980s to exploit the Sino-Soviet split. Contemporary global civilization walks an existential razor's edge precisely because China inoculated itself against Victorian imperialism by adopting the very worst of Western ideas. 4. Nazi Germany. In the opening stages of the Great Depression, from late 1929 through early 1933, communism plausibly threatened to engulf Weimar Germany. The record of the Soviet Union terrified all but the most ardent of socialists. But poverty, coupled with organized nationwide street violence, gave the Communist Party of Germany a genuine chance to seize power. Germany's liberal republic was collapsing under the strain of the global economic collapse. Coupled with its profound post-Treaty of Versailles unpopularity among most Germans, Weimar's politicians were powerless to prevent a Red Revolution. Germany's army had been the guarantor of the Republic's survival. Only it offered any hope of forcibly stemming the red tide. Aged President and former Field Marshal Paul von Hindenburg was the keystone in the army's efforts to preserve Germany from communism. His advisors tried everything from supporting genuine republicanism to establishing a military dictatorship. Nothing brought stability, at least nothing on their terms. Only one party matched the communists in popularity among the disenfranchised, as well as in street power: Hitler's National Socialist German Workers' Party. However, the Austrian corporal was mercurial, unpredictable, and unproven. He and his Nazis also railed against the establishment's interests as virulently as any communist. In early 1933, Hindenburg's cabinet entrusted Adolf Hitler with the chancellorship of Germany. They believed that they could control the formerly homeless, unsophisticated Bohemian painter. They believed that they were inoculating Germany against communist socialism by adopting National Socialism on their terms. Merely 1 month later, the Reichstag burned down and Hitler was granted emergency powers. A year and a half later, after the Night of the Long Knives, every member of the German military swore an unalterable oath of personal loyalty to Adolf Hitler by name. The next year, the Nuremberg laws redefined German citizenship in accord with Nazi race theory. 3 years later, the West appeased Hitler's dismemberment of Czechoslovakia at Munich. The following year, Hitler initiated the last general war, thus far the bloodiest struggle in all of human history. Just as social Darwinism debased human society and savagery, attempts at political inoculation have brought untold misery to the world. Biological models should never be applied to solving humanity's political problems. Thank you for listening. Good day, and happy Thanksgiving.